The invitation. Sarah Chen stared at the hologram floating above her kitchen counter, its ethereal blue glow illuminating the scattered remains of her latest experiment. The message rotated slowly, displaying the ornate seal of the Galactic Culinary Federation in all its pretentious glory. She'd read it 15 times already, but the words still seemed surreal. To Chef Sarah Chen of Earth, greetings. Due to recent regulatory changes regarding developing worlds, the Galactic Culinary Olympics Committee extends an invitation to represent your species in this cycle's competition. The rest of the message blurred as she absently stirred a pot of slowly caramelizing sugar. The sweet, toasted scent that normally brought her comfort now seemed to mock her. Earth had been part of the galactic community for barely 5 years, and most alien species still viewed humans as primitive curiosities. The few human restaurants that had opened in alien spaces were treated as novelty establishments at best. Computer, play message attachment. Sarah commanded. A new hologram materialized, footage from last cycle's Olympics. Chefs from across the galaxy showcased techniques that defied physics. A Zentarian created a dessert that changed flavors based on the diner's emotions. A Vextar chef crafted a floating constellation of crystallized starfruit that sang harmonies when consumed. Sarah's hand trembled slightly, sending a drop of molten sugar spattering onto her worn steel workbench. She'd spent the last 3 years pushing the boundaries of terrestrial pastry, combining classical techniques with cutting-edge food science. But compared to what she was watching, her most innovative creations seemed like a child playing with flour and eggs. The kitchen door chimed. "Come in, Marcus," she called out, recognizing her sous chef's distinctive knock. The door slid open with a soft hiss. "You're here late again," Marcus said, navigating through the maze of equipment that filled the research kitchen. His eyes caught the hologram and widened. "Is that what I think it is? The invitation we never thought would come." Sarah's laugh held an edge of hysteria. Apparently, someone decided Earth deserves a token presence at the Olympics, probably to show how enlightened and inclusive they are. Marcus leaned against a counter, careful to avoid the rack of cooling crystalline structures Sarah had been working on all week. "They're underestimating us." "That's good. Is it? Have you seen what we're up against?" Sarah gestured at the hologram, where a Meridian chef was creating a dessert that altered the flow of time around it. "We're so far behind in food technology." "That's exactly why we'll win," Marcus interrupted. "They're all so focused on technology that they've forgotten something fundamental about cooking." He picked up one of Sarah's experimental pieces, a delicate spiral of sugar glass infused with compounds that triggered specific memories. "They don't understand what food means to humans." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Connection. Story. Soul." Marcus set the spiral down carefully. "When was the last time you saw an alien chef create something because it reminded them of their grandmother's cooking, or because it captured the feeling of a perfect summer day? They're all about spectacle and technical achievement. But you make people feel things." Sarah turned back to her caramelizing sugar, adjusting the heat with practiced precision. "Feelings won't impress judges who can manipulate quantum states with molecular gastronomy." "Maybe not directly," Marcus conceded. "But what if we could combine our emotional understanding of food with their technology? Not copy what they do, but create something entirely new." The sugar reached the perfect amber color, and Sarah removed it from heat. As she watched the molten liquid cool and crystallize, an idea began to form. "We'd need to completely reinvent our approach, start from scratch with everything we know about pastry, and rebuild it from the ground up." "Good thing you've got 3 months until the Olympics then," Marcus grinned. "And a fully equipped research kitchen. And me." Sarah reached for her notebook. Actual paper, a quirk that amused her alien colleagues to no end. "We'll need to understand how different species perceive flavors, their neural structures, chemical receptors." Already downloaded everything publicly available about competitor species biology, Marcus said, pulling out his tablet. Been doing research since rumors about the regulatory changes started. Sarah looked at him sharply. You knew this was coming. Hoped. Prepared. There's a difference. He shrugged. Earth needs this, Sarah. We need to show them we're more than just the new kids in the galaxy. That humanity has something unique to offer. Sarah began writing rapidly, her mind racing with possibilities. We'll need new equipment, ways to test how our creations affect different physiologies. And ingredients. There's so much we don't know about alien ingredients. I may have some contacts in the xenobiology department at the university, Marcus said innocently, and maybe a few friends in customs who can expedite permits for exotic materials. A smile slowly spread across Sarah's face, the kind that had preceded some of her most revolutionary creations. You really have been planning for this. Someone had to. Humanity's reputation for food is basically mostly harmless right now. But you? Marcus gestured at the organized chaos of the kitchen, the evidence of countless experiments and innovations. You can change that. Show them that we understand food on a level they've never considered. Sarah looked around her kitchen with new eyes. Every tool, every technique she'd developed, every failure and success, they were all building blocks for something bigger than she'd imagined. The hologram still floated above the counter, alien chefs performing culinary impossibilities. But now, instead of intimidation, she felt a fierce determination. Computer, accept invitation, she commanded. The hologram flickered and displayed a confirmation message. And pull up everything we have on synesthetic flavor compounds. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Marcus was already clearing space on the main workbench. Where do we start? Sarah picked up the sugar spiral, studying how light played through its crystalline structure. We start with the basics. What makes a dessert more than just something sweet? What makes it tell a story? She set the spiral down and reached for fresh ingredients. And then we make it do something impossible. The next few hours were a blur of experimentation. Sarah and Marcus worked in practiced synchronization, pushing the boundaries of what their equipment could do. By the time the first hints of dawn began to color the sky, they had filled 3 pages with ideas and created 2 promising prototypes. It's a start, Sarah said, studying the luminescent pearl of spun sugar that pulsed gently in time with the viewer's heartbeat. But we need to think bigger, more fundamental. We will. Marcus stifled a yawn. But first, sleep. Can't revolutionize galactic cuisine if we're dead on our feet. Sarah nodded absently, already making notes for tomorrow's experiments. As Marcus headed for the door, she called out, "Thank you for believing in this. In me. Just remember me when you're accepting your medals," he said with a grin. And Sarah, we're going to show them what human creativity really means. After he left, Sarah stood alone in her kitchen, surrounded by the tools and ingredients that had defined her life's work. The invitation hologram had timed out, but she could still see those alien chefs in her mind, performing their culinary miracles. 3 months to bridge a technological gap of centuries. 3 months to prove that humanity's approach to food wasn't primitive, but profound. She picked up a fresh block of specialty chocolate, real cacao, worth its weight in gold since Earth joined the galactic community. Time to make the impossible delicious, she murmured, and got back to work. Sweet science. The xenobiology lab smelled nothing like a kitchen. Sarah wrinkled her nose at the sterile, artificial scent as she followed Dr. Patel through rows of complex equipment. 2 weeks had passed since the invitation, and she'd spent more time in labs than her kitchen lately. The challenge with multi-species gastronomy, Dr. Patel explained, pulling up a holographic display of mural patterns, isn't just different taste receptors. It's fundamentally different ways of experiencing reality. Sarah watched as the display cycled through various alien brain structures, like how the meridians taste color. Exactly. Or how Zentarians process temporal information through their digestive system. Dr. Patel manipulated the display, zooming in on a particular neural cluster. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite all these differences, We found some universal constants in how sentient beings process pleasure and memory. Sarah leaned closer, her chef's mind already racing with possibilities. That's our way in. If we can trigger those universal responses while accommodating species-specific biology, you might create something that transcends species barriers. Dr. Petal smiled. That's why I agreed to help. This is more than cooking. It's gastronomy. Back in her kitchen, Sarah and Marcus had transformed the space into something between a laboratory and a pastry shop. Molecular analyzers sat next to copper pots, and quantum stabilizers shared counter space with rolling pins. The Zentarian sugar crystals are ready, Marcus called out, carefully removing a tray from a modified incubator. The crystals pulsed with a soft inner light, each one a perfect dodecahedron. Sarah nodded, focused on a delicate procedure. She was piping a mixture of earth chocolate and meridian light essence into microscopic molds. How's their temporal stability? Holding at 94%. They'll maintain linear time flow for about 6 hours after activation. Good enough for plating. Sarah finished the last mold and straightened, stretching her back. Now for the real test. They had assembled a panel of volunteer tasters from various species, each one carefully screened and signed to strict non-disclosure agreements. As Sarah plated her latest creation, a seemingly simple chocolate truffle surrounded by a constellation of glowing sugar crystals, she felt the familiar mix of excitement and anxiety. The first taster was a meridian, their iridescent skin shifting colors with anticipation. Sarah watched intently as they sampled the dessert. The meridian's skin cycled through a rapid series of colors before settling on a deep, resonant blue that pulsed with golden undertones. The translator struggled to convey the complex harmonics of meridian speech. This tastes like the memory of joy. Not just the concept, but the actual neurological experience of remembering something joyful. One by one, each alien taster had similarly profound reactions. A Zentarian wept temporal tears that flowed backward. A Vexstar's crystalline appendages chimed in perfect harmony with their emotional state. It's working, Marcus whispered, recording each reaction. The universal pleasure responses are triggering across all species, but each one experiences it in their own culturally significant way. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. But we're still missing something. It's technically perfect, but it doesn't have soul, Marcus finished. We've mastered the science. Now we need to add the humanity. That night, after everyone had left, Sarah sat in her kitchen reviewing the test results. The technical achievements were impressive. She created flavors that existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously, textures that adapted to different alien physiologies, aromas that triggered cross-species emotional resonance. But Marcus was right. It was missing the human element that had made her fall in love with cooking in the first place. She pulled out her grandmother's old recipe book. Actual paper, the pages stained and worn with use. As she flipped through the familiar handwriting, memories flooded back. The smell of butter and vanilla on Sunday mornings. The way her grandmother could tell if something was ready just by listening to it bake. The joy of creating something that made people's eyes light up with pleasure. Computer, display current formula for the memory essence chocolate, she commanded. As the complex chemical equations appeared in the air before her, she began to make adjustments. Not based on calculations or xenobiological data, but on instinct and emotion. She added elements that shouldn't work according to the science, a touch of sea salt that reminded her of childhood beach trips, a hint of cinnamon that echoed winter holidays. The next morning, Marcus found her surrounded by new prototypes, her hair wild, and her chef's coat stained with exotic ingredients. "I think I've got it," she said without preamble. "Try this." She handed him what looked like a simple chocolate bonbon. As he tasted it, his eyes widened. The flavor was impossible to describe. It was like tasting a memory of home you'd never actually experienced, a warmth that went beyond physical sensation. "How did you?" he began. I stopped trying to recreate their techniques and started focusing on what we do best. She gestured at the workspace. The alien technology, the xenobiology. Those are just tools. The real magic is in making people feel something. The judges aren't people, though. They're aliens who think humans are primitive. Sarah's smile held a hint of mischief. That's exactly why this will work. We're not just going to show them advanced techniques. We're going to make them feel what food means to humanity. Every bite will tell them a story they've never heard before. The remaining weeks before the Olympics became a blur of refinement and testing. Sarah and her team worked to perfect the balance between technical innovation and emotional resonance. Each creation was a bridge between species, a demonstration that humanity's primitive approach to food held wisdom the galaxy had forgotten. As she packed the last of her equipment for transport to the Olympic venue, Sarah ran her hand along the worn spine of her grandmother's recipe book. "Ready to revolutionize galactic cuisine?" Marcus asked, sealing a crate of specially modified ingredients. Sarah carefully placed the recipe book in her personal bag, ready to show them what human food really means. The preliminaries. The Galactic Culinary Olympics venue was a marvel of engineering that made Sarah's knees weak. Floating platforms held fully equipped kitchens that could reconfigure themselves based on each chef's needs. The air sparkled with holographic displays showing close-ups of competitors' techniques, and the stands were filled with beings from across the galaxy. Station 47, the drone guide announced, leading Sarah and Marcus to their assigned kitchen. Environmental controls calibrated for Earth standard conditions. Please verify your equipment manifest. As they began unpacking, Sarah felt the weight of countless eyes on them. Humans were still a novelty in galactic society, and she could hear the murmurs and translated whispers. They're actually using physical implements. How quaint. Look, they brought organic matter as ingredients. I heard they still experience linear time while cooking. A tall, ethereal being floated over to their station. Chef Zilix, Sarah recognized from her research. Their restaurant on Centauri Prime had a 1,000-year waiting list. How traditional, Zilix said, their voice harmonizing in multiple dimensions. I wasn't aware the committee was including historical reenactments this cycle. Marcus tensed, but Sarah continued unpacking her grandmother's rolling pin with deliberate care. Sometimes the old ways have value, she said mildly. Would you like to try something traditional? She offered a small chocolate, one of her early test pieces. Zilix's upper appendages rippled in what Sarah had learned was amusement, but they accepted the morsel. The change was immediate. Zilix's translucent form flashed with colors, and their harmonic voice shifted through octaves of surprise. This is impossible. The temporal resonance, the mnemonic cascade. They stared at Sarah with all 4 eye clusters. How did you achieve this with physical tools? That's just the prototype, Sarah said, hiding her satisfaction. Wait until you see what we do with the actual competition pieces. The preliminaries began with a challenge that would have been impossible 3 months ago. Create a dessert that could be simultaneously experienced by 5 different species with incompatible digestive systems. Sarah watched her competitors deploy incredible technology. Chef Zilix created a quantum-entangled custard that existed in 5 different states simultaneously. Another chef manipulated the fundamental forces of reality to make a dessert that could pass through any form of matter. At her station, Sarah worked with quiet confidence. She combined Zentarian sugar crystals with Earth chocolate, each component modified at the molecular level to resonate with different species' pleasure centers. But the real magic wasn't in the technology. Time for the secret ingredient, she murmured to Marcus, whom nodded knowingly. From a small vial, she added 3 drops of clear liquid to each plate. What is that? Asked one of the judging drones, its sensors whirring. Salt water, Sarah replied, from Earth's Pacific Ocean. The exact spot where I first learned to swim. The drone's confusion was almost palpable. That component serves no culinary function. Sarah smiled. Wait and see. When the judges approached her station, a diverse panel representing major galactic species, she presented each with a seemingly simple plate. At its center sat what looked like a perfectly normal chocolate truffle, surrounded by a constellation of crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light. "The piece should be consumed in one bite," she instructed, "and I recommend closing your eyes." The judges complied, some with visible skepticism. The moment they tasted her creation, the entire venue fell silent. Each judge's species expressed emotion differently. Some glowed, some chimed, some shifted through impossible colors, but all showed clear signs of intense emotional response. The Meridian judge spoke first, their skin rippling with phosphorescent patterns. I taste the memory of joy. Not just any joy, but the first time I experienced the beauty of creation. How is this possible? The technical components are relatively simple, Sarah explained. Molecular gastronomy combined with temporal stabilizers and neural resonance enhancers. But the key ingredient is something unique to Earth cuisine. Which is? The drone judge demanded. Memory. Emotion. The salt water carries the quantum imprint of a pure moment of joy. My first experience of the ocean. When combined with the other ingredients, it creates a sympathetic resonance with each taster's own memories of discovery and wonder. The judges huddled, speaking in rapid exchanges that defied translation. Around the venue, other competitors had stopped their work to watch. Sarah caught Zelix staring at her with an expression that might have been respect. When the judges returned, their spokesperson addressed the entire venue. Preliminary round results are being revised. Earth's entry demonstrates an unprecedented integration of primitive and advanced techniques. Chef Chen will advance directly to the final round. The announcement caused an uproar. Sarah heard phrases like impossible and technological assistance being thrown around. But she stayed focused on her work, already planning her next creation. Marcus leaned close as they packed up their station. "You didn't tell them about the quantum-locked emotional resonance in the chocolate, or the temporal binding agents." "No point," Sarah replied, carefully wiping down her grandmother's rolling pin. "They're so focused on the technology, they missed the real innovation. We're not just making food that tastes good or does impressive tricks. We're making food that reminds people, all people, what it means to be alive." As they prepared to leave the competition floor, Chef Zelix approached again. This time, their harmonic voice held no trace of condescension. "I have existed for 900 years, they said. I have created desserts that alter the fabric of space-time. Yet I have never experienced anything like what you made today. Perhaps there is more to learn from Earth's traditions than we realized." Sarah nodded politely, but her mind was already on the final round. She had shown them that humans could compete at their level. Now it was time to show them something they had never seen before. That evening, as she reviewed her plans for the final, she received an anonymous message. "Beware. Not everyone appreciates having their assumptions challenged. Protect your ingredients." Sarah showed the message to Marcus, who immediately began checking their security protocols. But Sarah wasn't worried. After all, humans had a long history of turning adversity into opportunity. Crisis and innovation. The morning of the semi-finals, Sarah knew something was wrong the moment she entered their prep area. The air held a faint ozone smell that shouldn't have been there. Her specially modified storage unit was still sealed, its quantum locks apparently untampered with, but her chef's instincts were screaming. "Marcus," she called softly, "run a full spectral analysis on the storage unit. Something's not right." Marcus was already moving, scanner in hand. His face grew progressively darker as he read the results. "They're gone. All of our modified ingredients. The temporal chocolate, the memory lock sugars, everything. The quantum seal looks intact, but someone used a phase shifter. The ingredients were removed without breaking the lock." Sarah's mind raced. They had 2 hours until the semi-final presentation. Their entire program had been built around those specially prepared ingredients, each one representing weeks of research and preparation. Can we replicate them? She asked, already knowing the answer. Marcus shook his head. The quantum stabilization alone took 3 days per batch, even if we had the equipment here. Chef Chen, a competition official, floated nearby. Is there a problem? Sarah straightened her shoulders. Every instinct told her this was no accident. Someone wanted to force her to withdraw, to prove that humans couldn't compete at this level. No problem, she said clearly, noting how many competitors were watching, just finalizing our preparations. The official nodded and moved on. Sarah turned to Marcus, her voice low and intense. Get me everything you can about the other competitors' ingredients, what they're using, what they've discarded, and find me the nearest Earth food market. You're not withdrawing. Sarah's smile held a fierce edge. Humans didn't get into space by giving up when things got hard. We're going to show them what Earth ingenuity really means. The next 2 hours were a blur of improvisation. Sarah scraped crystallized sugar from discarded Zentarian containers, salvaging trace amounts of their temporal properties. She found Earth ingredients at a tiny market catering to human tourists. Basic things like flour, butter, vanilla. A sympathetic Meridian chef, impressed by her preliminary performance, gave her a small vial of light essence. It's not much, Marcus said, laying out their salvaged supplies. Nothing like what we lost. It's enough. Sarah had that look in her eyes, the one that had led to her most revolutionary creations. They expect us to either withdraw or fail spectacularly. Instead, we're going to show them something new. She began working with fierce concentration, combining techniques that should have been incompatible. The salvaged Zentarian sugar was carefully recrystallized using Earth methods, creating something that wasn't quite temporal sugar but had properties all its own. She incorporated the light essence into a traditional chocolate ganache, the quantum resonance creating unexpected harmonies with the cocoa's natural compounds. This is insane, Marcus muttered, watching her work. We're competing against quantum gastronomy with what amounts to enhanced home cooking. Exactly. Sarah didn't look up from where she was tempering chocolate with microscopic precision. We're not trying to beat them at their own game anymore. We're changing the rules. When presentation time came, Sarah's display was deceptively simple compared to her competitors. No floating constructions of pure energy, no time-shifted flavor matrices, just 9 small chocolates arranged in a perfect circle. The judges approached her station last. Sarah could read the dismissal in their postures. Clearly, the primitive human had been forced to resort to basic techniques. My offering is called Innovation from Necessity, she announced. It explores what happens when you strip away advanced technology and rely on fundamental understanding. She served each judge one piece. The shells are Earth chocolate, tempered by hand. But the tempering process was modified using principles learned from Zentarian temporal manipulation. Instead of shifting through time, the chocolate exists in a state of perpetual perfect crystallization. The judge's instruments confirmed her words, showing readings that should have been impossible without quantum stabilizers. The ganache contains meridian light essence, but instead of using it for illumination, I've created a chemical reaction with the cocoa solids that produces flavors that exist as pure energy. She gestured to the remaining pieces. Each chocolate demonstrates a different principle of advanced gastronomy, achieved through entirely physical means. The judges sampled her creations. The effect was subtle at first, no dramatic light shows or reality distortions. But as the chocolates melted, their expressions changed to astonishment. The Zentarian judge's temporal appendages flickered rapidly. You've created quantum gastronomy effects through chemical reactions, without any quantum manipulation technology. Impossible, stated the drone judge. Our scans show no evidence of advanced technological assistance. Not impossible, Sarah corrected. Just a different way of thinking. Humans have been manipulating matter through chemical reactions for thousands of years. We learned to create complex flavors and textures long before we had technology to help us. When you take away our advanced tools, we don't give up. We innovate. The Meridian judge's skin had shifted to a deep, thoughtful purple. Each piece tells a story of adaptation, of taking limitations and turning them into advantages. This is not what we expected from Earth's cuisine. That's rather the point, Sarah said quietly. Humanity's strength isn't in our technology. It's in our ability to understand fundamental principles and apply them in new ways. When someone tried to sabotage us by taking our advanced ingredients. Sabotage. The drone judge's sensors whirred with increased intensity. Check the quantum remnants in our storage unit. Someone used a phase shifter to remove our prepared ingredients, but instead of failing, we adapted. Every piece here was made with salvaged materials and basic Earth ingredients, combined in ways that have never been tried before. The judges huddled, their discussion more animated than Sarah had seen before. When they broke apart, their spokesperson addressed the entire venue. Chef Chen's demonstration goes beyond mere culinary skill. She has shown that true innovation comes not from technology alone, but from deep understanding and creative adaptation. She will advance to the finals, and a full investigation into the sabotage will be conducted. As the crowd buzzed with excitement, Sarah began cleaning her station with the same careful attention she'd given her cooking. She caught sight of Chef Zulix watching her with all 4 eye clusters. You could have exposed the sabotage immediately, they observed, filed a protest, asked for accommodation. And what would that have proved? Sarah continued wiping down her work surface. That humans need special treatment. Instead, we proved something far more important. That Earth cuisine is more advanced than we believed. That no matter what tools we have or don't have, humans will find a way to create something extraordinary. Sarah's smile held pride not just for herself, but for all of humanity. Now imagine what we'll do in the finals with a fully stocked kitchen. A new fusion. The morning of the finals, Sarah stood in her rebuilt kitchen station, surrounded by both Earth ingredients and alien technology. The investigation into the sabotage had revealed a conspiracy among several lower-ranking chefs, now disqualified. More importantly, it had earned humanity unexpected respect among the galactic culinary community. All our replacement ingredients are quantum stable, Marcus reported, checking their stores. And I've added some interesting finds. Crystallized starlight, temporal vanilla, even some Vextar resonance spice. Sarah nodded, but her attention was on her grandmother's recipe book, open to a well-worn page. We're not going to just show them advanced techniques today. We're going to show them why humans cook in the first place. The final challenge was deceptively simple. Create a dessert that represents your species' contribution to galactic cuisine. The other finalists were already producing spectacular displays. Chef Zulix was crafting a dessert that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions, while the Meridian finalist created flavors that could only be perceived through quantum entanglement. Sarah began with seemingly simple preparations, scaling ingredients, tempering chocolate, preparing custard bases. But each movement was precisely calculated, each ingredient modified at the quantum level to interact with her traditional techniques in revolutionary ways. Remember the first time you tasted your grandmother's chocolate cake? She asked Marcus as she worked. That moment when you realized food could be more than just sustenance. Marcus nodded, carefully monitoring the temporal stability of their sugar work. It was like tasting love made tangible. Exactly. Other species create amazing things with their technology. But humans, we learned to put emotions into our food before we even mastered fire. Sarah carefully added drops of modified essence to her mixture. That's what we're sharing today. Hours passed in focused work. Sarah moved between traditional techniques and advanced technology with fluid grace, neither rejecting the new nor abandoning the old. She incorporated quantum gastronomy into classic recipes, used temporal manipulation to perfect traditional techniques, and infused everything with carefully preserved emotional resonances. When the final assembly began, the other competitors' displays were magnificent. Floating constructions of pure energy, desserts that rewrote the laws of physics, flavors that existed in conceptual space rather than physical reality. Sarah's creation appeared disarmingly simple, a chocolate cake presented on an elegant plate. But as she finished the last details, even her competitors fell silent, sensing that something extraordinary was happening in her kitchen. The judges approached her station last. Sarah stood proudly behind her creation. "I present Heritage and Horizons, an exploration of what happens when human tradition meets galactic innovation." She served each judge a slice. The cake base looks traditional, but it's made with flour that's been quantum-aged through 1,000 cycles of baking and cooling, creating flavors that exist across multiple timelines. The chocolate has been modified to resonate with the pleasure centers of all known sentient species, while maintaining the complex flavor profile that humans have spent centuries perfecting. The judges studied their plates with various sensing organs. The drone judges' scanners whirred continuously. "We're detecting temporal anomalies, quantum entanglement, and several forms of energy we cannot classify." "The real magic happens when you taste it," Sarah said softly. "Because beyond all the technology, this is still, at its heart, my grandmother's chocolate cake recipe." As each judge tasted their slice, the reaction was unlike anything seen before in the competition. The Zentarian judge's temporal appendages went completely still, a sign of intense emotion. The Meridian judge's skin displayed colors that weren't supposed to exist in this dimension. The drone judge actually rebooted. "This is..." The Meridian judge struggled to find words. "I taste the cake, yes, with all its quantum complexity. But I also taste memories, emotions, things that should be impossible to convey through food." "Human cooking has always been about more than nutrients or even pleasure," Sarah explained. "We cook to share our stories, our memories, our love. I've simply found a way to make those emotional resonances perceivable to non-human biology." "The technical achievement is extraordinary," the drone judge announced. "You've created quantum effects we've never seen before, using a combination of primitive and advanced techniques that shouldn't work together." "But that's not what makes it special, is it?" Sarah looked each judge in their respective sensing organs. "What makes it special is that for a moment, it lets you experience food the way humans do. Not just as a physical experience, but as an emotional one, as a connection between beings." The judges conferred longer than they had for any other competitor. When they finally turned back, their spokesperson addressed not just Sarah, but the entire venue. "In evaluating Earth's contribution to galactic cuisine, we expected to see primitive techniques enhanced by borrowed technology. Instead, Chef Chen has shown us something entirely new, a way of understanding food that transcends mere technical achievement. By combining human intuition with advanced science, she has created not just new flavors or effects, but a new way of experiencing cuisine itself." The announcement of her victory was almost anticlimactic. Sarah accepted the awards and accolades with grace, but her real satisfaction came from watching beings from across the galaxy experiencing human cooking with new understanding. Later, as she and Marcus packed up their station, Chef Zilix approached one final time. "I must know," they said, all 4 eye clusters glowing with curiosity. "How did you achieve such precise quantum effects with such simple tools?" Sarah smiled, carefully wrapping her grandmother's rolling pin. "The same way humanity got into space. We observed, we learned, and we found our own way to make the impossible possible." She glanced around the venue, where several alien chefs were already experimenting with combining their advanced techniques with Earth-inspired methods. "And maybe we've proven that sometimes the old ways and the new ways are better together." "You've changed galactic cuisine," Zilix observed. "No," Sarah corrected, closing her grandmother's recipe book with gentle reverence. "We've reminded the galaxy that cooking isn't just about technique or technology. It's about bringing people together, sharing experiences, and finding new ways to understand each other. Humans have known that for thousands of years." She packed the last of her tools, each one a bridge between Earth's culinary heritage and humanity's boundless future among the stars. We didn't change galactic cuisine. We just added a little bit of humanity to it. And across the galaxy, beings of all species were about to discover that Earth's primitive cooking held wonders they had never imagined, one chocolate cake at a time.